Well, Joanne was gracious enough to offer us the opportunity to pick our topic today. And with Mother's Day in mind, we thought to pick the topic of divine friendship. I think when we think of Divine Mother, we think of love. And so divine friendship is the essence of our human interactions. But we want to talk a little bit about also the divine interacting one between another of us humans. And I wanted to start by mentioning an experience that I had this last week. I do a fair amount of spiritual counseling in the work that I do with Ananda. And post-pandemic, I've learned some things about friendship and our human interactions. Someone came to me and she was symbolic of a number of people who've come to me since the end of the pandemic. And she was a very outgoing, loving, friendly person. She's Indian and she has a large extended family, and she was accustomed to spending a lot of time with her family. And then the pandemic broke out and the isolation set in, and this otherwise gregarious, bubbly, loving person became depressed in the isolation of not being able to have the warmth of the friends and family around her every weekend as she was accustomed to having. And so I realized that this topic, especially now, is a very important topic, as the, most of, not all, but most of the isolation of the pandemic has started to melt away, and we're able to interact with one another again, and to be aware and conscious of the struggles that quite a few people had with this process of isolation. So what we want to talk about is the opposite of that isolation and how we can walk through into this whole new era. We're never going back. There's so much happening online, and we can be connected. We have people taking courses with us from all around the world, Bangalore, Chicago, they're everywhere, because they can be. So our spiritual family has grown tremendously, really, during the pandemic, while at the same time the warmth of coming back together as you are here today is fairly recent and available to people. So I wanted to start with a brief excerpt. Yogananda actually has a poem called Friendship in his book Whispers from Eternity, a book of prayer demands. And it's a long poem. I'm not going to read all of it, but just a few very brief excerpts. He says, friendship is noble, fruitful, holy. When separate souls march in difference, yet in harmony, agreeing and disagreeing. Friendship grows in both likeness and difference. Friendship sleeps or dies in familiarity. Ah, friendship, where thy soul-born flowers fall, There on that sacred shrine of fragrance, the friend of all friends craves to come and remain. It's a powerful prayer demand. And as I said, it's much, much longer. You might enjoy reading it sometime. But the points in there are really relevant, which is to look beyond the personality. You know, we all know we're really not these bodies. We are spirit. And we're not these personalities. I had an interesting experience. There was an older disciple of Yogananda who had written a book called The Flawless Mirror. Her name was Kamala, and she lived at Ananda Village for a while with us, and she had dementia. And we were all taking turns taking care of her. And then one day I said to Swami Kriyananda, Ananda's founder, I said, how can it be? She was a very advanced disciple of Yogananda. How can it be that the mind goes to dementia for her? And he said, Padma, we're not our minds either. We're not the bodies. We're not the minds. We're not the personalities. So true divine friendship is about trying to relate more and more soul to soul. And there are just 2 points I want to make because I don't have a lot of time, and then Hriman's going to speak as well. The one point is that as true divine friends, we try to be that flawless mirror. We're not flawless yet, but we're working on it, all of us. We try to be that mirror for one another in a loving way. And I have a little illustration. Years ago, I used to manage the publishing division of Ananda when we lived at Ananda Village. And Swami Kriyananda was very productive writing in those days. And we had a name back then that the publishing industry, the bookstore industry, couldn't relate to. They didn't care for it. And so Swami had just written a book in which he had a definition of something he called crystal clarity. And it was a beautiful definition. So I went to him and I said, what if we named our publishing house Crystal Clarity? And he liked that idea. So that's what it became, because it really reflects all that he's written, 150 books. And so what happened was, about a year later, I was having a meeting with him on something he was writing. It was just he and he said, you know, so-and-so just was talking to me, and they thought maybe our publishing name should be something else, you know, whatever it was. I don't even remember. I just remember my mind got enraged. I just started telling him all the reasons why that was a terrible idea, and we had to keep the name because people are just getting used to, you know, you can just see my mind was flapping. And then I looked at him at a certain point as my mouth was going like this, and all I saw in his eyes was just a very calm love. Super still, super calm love. No judgment. No, look at you flapping your jaw, you know, just a calm love. That's divine friendship, when we can be that for one another. I mean, to do it without judgment, to do it without, you idiot, you know, why are you, to really sincerely just be calm, which comes from meditation. Many of us have that practice. It's a powerful practice. To deepen our friendships with one another is to become still in our hearts and our minds. The last story I wanted to share was on the point of listening. That's a fine art. I teach a 55-hour course in spiritual counseling, and the art of listening is a big part of that. The story I have is about, on Mother's Day, my mother-in-law. She was a devout Catholic in the true sense of the word. She was very accepting and universal, not at all dogmatic. And in fact, I found that book, Metaphysical Meditations, that I read that little prayer out of on her nightstand after she passed away. So, she was very open-minded. Well, in the last 2 years of her life, she lived to be 87. She lived in a beautiful retirement complex home in Monterey. And she would tell me, she said, when I go down to the dining room, she said, I look for somebody who's sitting by themselves. And then I sit with them and have my meal. And she said, often they repeat themselves, but I don't care. And I thought, to me, that is the ultimate of the art of listening. Not just only listening with our ears, but listening with our hearts and observing one another and being a divine friend to one another. So.
Well, we play good cop, bad cop. I'm the bad cop. Padma and I have lived in intentional communities pretty much most of our adult life. And in that, there's a bond and a commitment. You live with people for many years, and you get to learn a lot about people. And even Yogananda in his day, he had, his ashram down in Los Angeles for many decades there at Mount Washington. And even he would say, among these monks and nuns and people who lived here, because negativity, critique, etc., is part of our, yin and yang, part of the duality of life, it's there in everyone. And so to be a divine friend is to be a person who, as we aspire here in unity and in our lives, to, isn't there a song, something about taking the positive and not taking the negative? I am not very good at songs, but I'm sure there is such a song. And that's really the affirmation of our lives. Because, it's like loving people. We think, well, I want to love everyone. Well, I can tell you from personal experience that that's not possible. I don't love everyone because some people I get along with, some people I'd rather not. But I can be loving. Do you see the difference? The feeling of loving that comes from prayer and meditation and service and devotion means that we don't have to sit in the judgment seat. And speaking of the judgment seat, we don't want to be so open-minded that our, brains fall out. If someone is a liar or a thief or a gossip, there's no judgment in simply recognizing that as a fact. It's whether you dislike the person for their not so positive traits that converts it into what we normally think of as judgment. So Yogananda said, even here in the ashram, and in any group of humans who come together on any kind of regular basis, whether or not that's high-minded or just prosaic, like in the workplace, for example, but there will always be either each person going through their stuff, getting into moods, negativity, depression or something, or some people do so habitually. And I remember Swami Kriyananda telling us as young members in the intentional community, something that I do when I interview members for our community, is let's be realistic, okay? We all have our issues. And if you think this community is a bunch of saints, I have some news for you. We're here to become saints, but We're not there yet. So whatever karma, as we like to say, whatever your issues are, you're going to find them right here. They're going to follow you in your life. So be prepared for that. And so what we learn is that, oh, and this is another interesting, fun point, I think, that Yogananda would say, and therefore Kriyananda would train us. He would say that all you got to do, he said, when I was a young monk, all I had to do, if some of the monks were, because they came and they went, right? I mean, that's how it is. And those with the carping, complaining spirit, skeptical, and so on, all you got to do is respond something positive. He said the ones who stick around any group, whether an office or a church, long enough, who other people tend to ignore because they are negative, will always seek out the newest person. So those of you who guide the flock, if you will, it's helpful to use your wisdom to help redirect that when that tends to happen. So it's a question of being honest about what we go through at different times. And when someone's going through something, if you can respond with, let's imagine, as often happens, oh, she's just a wonderful person, then you wait for the shoe to drop. But, and that's what you sort of hear. So a great response is just to say, yeah, but she's so great with the children, or she's, so serviceful here at the church, or just come back, don't argue with them. Because there's always anybody half intelligent will pick up the string with some truth in it if it's negative. So that's fine. Just know that. Just redirect towards something positive. After a while, that kind of person, if it's in a group dynamics, they'll ignore you. They'll go on to somebody else, see if they can deal with them. And so here, the beauty for being here with all of you is that the high-mindedness that we share is such that it's easier for us to see other people in their higher octave. That's one of the great gifts our friend and teacher, Swami Kriyananda, who lived with Yogananda in the last years of Yogananda's life, that was one of the greatest gifts. He wrote 150 books. Yeah, he gave great lectures. I hardly remember any of them. What he gave to us was respect. What he gave to us is seeing in us our own highest potential, no matter how much of a schmuck we might have been at times, right? I mean, I think of the stuff that he put up with Padma and I and hundreds of other close friends, as it were. We can do that for one another. When our son was going through his teen years, this was in Linwood after we moved from Ananda Village in California, he was going through his troubled times, right? Anybody recognize that? Not you all, but probably your children, right? Anyway, Swami turned to us and he said, just remember who your son really is. Those qualities that you saw in him in his perhaps more innocent years, or as relates to one another, the qualities that we see when we're, hitting on all cylinders, as it were, when we're up. And hold that, when Padma mentioned the flawless mirror, hold that in your mind. You don't have to say anything. Hold that in your mind with each person, a reflection of those qualities that you do admire. As I say, even in silence, which, frankly says a lot more than speaking. Even in silence, who might I be talking about that? Even in silence, you go into a grocery store or you go someplace. That's why we do healing prayers for places of conflict like Ukraine. I'm sure you all do in one way or another. But even in silence, as you go about our lives, to radiate blessing, which, by the way, is a great way of psychic protection. Nowadays, there's so much psychic intrusion and attack from negativity. We're so polarized. The best response to that, obviously, is not to be argumentative or what have you, but is to radiate goodwill to everyone. And there are just two last things I'll mention that have been part and parcel of community in our experience that anyone can do, because we're all in a community, which is, and I'm thinking whether it's a couple or just two friends, whatever your relationship is, friendship, serve together. Come to places like this. go out into the world around you. One of you was mentioning working with where'd you go? With kids. Yeah, there you are. Yeah, right. And that's, boy, do kids need what you have to offer these days. Again, it's not about the words. It's just about that you care. Okay? Krishna Priya, I don't know if you ever went into retirement homes, but our tradition has been to take our choir singing groups into retirement homes. You don't have to sing, you just sing. You just go there, be. And it's such a beautiful thing to serve together with a friend, whatever that relationship is. And then lastly, how can I ignore the fact that when people do pray and meditate together, it changes lives. I think of some of the people that Padma and I, years ago in the original community, meditated together with. They've been sent to Italy. They've been sent to India. They've been sent to weird Portland. Seattle. We used to call Seattle, where we serve, Siberia. We'd tell our friends, yeah, we got sent to Siberia because we're a bunch of schmucks. And now it's not, we even have a center in Siberia now, so I can't say that. But truthfully, meditating together forms a bond that goes beyond those words. We have a song that we sing on Sunday. Out of the silence came the song of creation. Out of the darkness came the light. And when you close your eyes and you see darkness, that's the darkness out of which we have been born. And that's the darkness to which we will return. But not in unconsciousness. There is nothing but consciousness. We just can aspire to have the faith that death is like changing your outfit. It's just changing your career, it's just another change. And we come from that space and we go back to that space. We tense in life as we work and serve. We relax and go back into the inner silence. And those bonds that are formed with one another in the silence are bonds that nothing can break. And that is, lastly, what true spiritual marriage is. When Jesus said, let nothing asunder, or whatever it was, it sounds kind of harsh. What he means is those bonds between any two people that are formed in the silent qualities of our soul. Those are bonds that cannot be broken. You can get into issues with your friend, or they can move far away. But no matter what you've gone through with a friend, and maybe they're not a friend anymore, you can still remember the friendship that you enjoyed and be grateful for that. Out of the silence comes the song of creation. Thank you.